we're having we're not having a technical problem with the feed. All right, again, thank you, Mrs. Kern and family. We appreciate your years of service. We'll move to appointments. Social Services Advisory Committee, Western Caroline, that's Mr. Black.
I do have one. I would like to appoint Andrew Hoyt.
Andrew Hoyt?
Yep.
Is there a second?
A second.
Okay, motion made by Mr. Black, seconded by Mr. Forehand. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion carries unanimously. Healthy Generations, I think, Mr. Underwood, you said you was looking for someone? No problem. Okay, Planning Commission, Mr. Forehand.
I'm gonna have to postpone this till next meeting.
No problem. Building Code Board of Appeals, Madison, Reedy Church, and Bowling Green. Madison, Mr. Forehand.
I thought
Your
mine
person
was able
cannot
to
serve.
do it. Yeah, they cannot because they're now a county employee. So I gotta find that person.
Okay. Yeah, I'm sorry, you got somebody for the appointment and now they can't serve. Reedy Church, Mr. Underwood, do you have one? Okay, Mr. Seeley?
I was not aware I had this appointment. Is the person serving still capable of serving or interested in serving? All right, thank you.
I didn't see it on here if they were. All righty, Economic Development Authority at large, I believe Mr. Atkins is trying to retire. So we'll need to have a little discussion or a thought about an at-large person for EDA. Mr. Wilson is running up to make an appointment or to give us someone.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Atkins is retiring, but from his day job, he has more time now to spend with the EDA he would like to stay on.
Wow.
Would you like a motion?
Please, please.
Mr. Chair, I nominate Mr. Atkins as our at-large Economic Development Authority member.
Second. Okay, motion made by Mrs. Long, seconded by Mr. Underwood. All in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed, nay. That motion carries unanimously.
Thank you.
Transportation Committee. This is where we talked about having members of the Board of Supervisors, citizens, to talk about transportation. I have one person who's actually not in my district who volunteered, Ms. Linda Arnold. I don't see her today, but she wanted to volunteer, so if we could add her to the list.
I actually have a volunteer from my district.
All righty. Oh, okay. This is staff put together 2 citizens that do not reside in the same district as the Board of Supervisors or Planning Commission representatives. So do you have somebody somewhere else?
No, it's in mine, and that'd be fine. It's David Beal.
He's in your district though.
Mhm.
They're saying not in your district. Oh, as a Board of Supervisors member. Okay. That's fine.
Nominated supervisors and
Right.
members.
We have not, or Planning Commission members. That's fine. Mr. Beal, you'd like to nominate?
Yes.
Is there
Second.
is there a supervisor? I'm gonna just do them all in one shot. Is there a supervisor who'd like to volunteer?
I would actually like to participate in that, which would impact Miss Arnold.
Yeah, let's look at having people on. You want to participate or be on it? There's a difference.
I'd like to be on that committee.
Okay. Any other supervisor like to be on the committee? Mr. Chairman, I'd like to be on that committee. All right.
Is this going to be a temporary?
No, I think
Committee or
it'll be like most, we'll do it for a year or so.
I think we need to clarify all those regulations.
Mr. Hughes, do you have, at this time, have any planning commission members who are willing to serve?
I do not at this time, no.
Nor have we gotten a school board representative. I don't know if we've asked or not, but, okay.
And I would have a question if, I mean, as we said today, their concentration needs to be on the education. If they feel they'd like a school board employee, then I would suggest somebody
You're gonna
with
ask
the transportation or that deals with transportation directly and not a teacher. would
I
be-
think, yeah, I think you're right, and at this point, it's probably so hard to get people to volunteer. We'll have Mrs. Arnold and Mr. Forehand together, and I'll just put together a motion to appoint Linda Arnold, Clay Forehand, Reggie Underwood, and David Beal to the Transportation Committee, if we could, and ask for a second. Or not.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, then I'll let Mr. Black make the motion and Mr. Forehand make the second. Discussion, all those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed, nay. The motion carries unanimously, and I will ask the board to look at this again at our next meeting, and then try to get started as soon as possible. If we get more citizens, fine. If we can't have another supervisor, but if we get more citizens, that's great. And Mr. Hughes will get us planning commission members. All righty, at this time, we've gotten to the consent agenda. Is there anything the board members would like to have pulled from the consent agenda? Motion to approve. Motion to approve the consent agenda as presented. I do want to make, Chief Loftus is here. All right, Mr. Forehand makes a motion to approve the consent agenda. I'm gonna take a liberty, Mr. Underwood made the motion. Y'all look so much alike. And Mr. Underwood made the motion. I'm gonna take a statement about it so we can
Glad
all
you
say
did
that.
that, because I did have a question, actually.
All those, a question on F?
No, it was a question on, never mind, it's later on. F is fine.
All those in favor, did I get a second?
Second.
Thank you. Now I got Underwood and Forehand made the motion, made the second to approve the consent agenda, A through E, G, and H. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. The motion carries unanimously. Chief Loftus, you've come to the podium once before. Would you come to the podium, please, again? And I don't have the resolution in front of me, so I'm sorry. Agenda item F, we are of course going to approve, but I wanted you to come here in front of all the people that are here and all the people watching, so we could say what a great job you've been doing as the fire chief, and what a great job we're getting as fire and rescue. We are going to declare this week, October 8th through October 14th, as Fire Prevention Week in Caroline. So we hope people don't see you professionally, but we wanted to see you here, and personally, I wanted to say thank you for a job well done.
All right, thank you very much.
Appreciate it. So we're not gonna approve it, agenda item F. I'm gonna make a motion to approve it myself, so we need a second.
Second.
All right, seconded by Mrs. Long and Mr. Underwood. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. That motion carries unanimously. We have 7:30 public comments, and we have 2 public hearings shortly thereafter. So we will, do we have time for closed meeting? Okay, Mr. Seeley, we'll do the closed meeting while we're taking a break.
Mr. Chairman, I move that this board convene in closed meeting pursuant to the consultation with legal counsel and contracts exemption under 2.2-3711.A.8 and 829 of the Code of Virginia for consultation with the county attorney and discussion with staff regarding a performance agreement related to an economic development project in the Port Royal District where discussion in open session would adversely affect the bargaining position or negotiating strategy of the county.
Is there a second to the motion?
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Sealy, seconded by Mrs. Long. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Motion carries unanimously. We will be in closed meeting and hopefully be back close to 7:30 to begin public comments. All right, we will reconvene the October 10th board meeting. At this time, we will do public comments. Oh, we had to come out of closed
Come
meeting
out of
first.
closed meeting.
Mr. Sealy, you got the closed meeting, motion?
I move the Caroline Board of Supervisors certifies that to the best of each board member's knowledge, only public business matters lawfully exempt from the open meeting requirement by Virginia law were discussed in closed meeting to which this certification applies, and only such business matters that are identified in the motion convening closed meeting were heard, discussed, or considered by the board.
Is there a second to Mr. Sealy's motion?
Second.
Okay, the motion's made by Mr. Sealy, seconded by Mr. Underwood to come out of the closed meeting. Discussion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Motion carries unanimously. Mr. Forehand, do you certify that only those things discussed in the closed meeting were part of the closed meeting motion?
So certify.
Mr. Black,
I so certify.
Mr. Sealy,
I so certify.
Mrs. Long,
I so certify.
Mr. Underwood? I so certify. And I as well certify. Now we're at public comments. Public comment section is, part of the agenda that the board, uses to get citizen input. It is not part of the public hearing. We have two public hearings today. If you'd like to speak regarding the public hearings, you would have to wait for that time. The two public hearings are the transient occupancy tax and the proposed text amendment for the planned innovation, research, and technology park, what's been referred to as PERT. So if you'd like to speak on those two, please wait. At this time, I will open the public comment section opened, and we are going to be as polite to each other as possible. So the public comment section will be declared open.
Good evening, members of the board. Kevin Collins, write-in candidate for the Reedy Church District. Good evening, members. Tonight I stand before you to discuss a matter of paramount concern for our beloved Caroline County. This issue centers around transparency, accountability, and the very essence of our democratic values. Specifically, I'd like to address the recent Freedom of Information request filed just last month. This request aimed to dispel the perception that influential attorneys were unduly shaping Caroline County's affairs. Sadly, the information revealed through this request has not alleviated our concerns. It has, in fact, heightened them. Freedom of Information Act is a cornerstone of government transparency, enabling citizens like us to access information about our local government's inner workings. The request made with the noble goal of fostering transparency, yet the information brought to light a deeply troubling pattern. What we uncovered is a consistent pattern where attorneys and developers, some of whom are intimately familiar with Caroline County's intricacies, have wielded undue influence over our elected officials and county administration. These attorneys have authored documents and presented them to specific members of our board and county administration, whom seem overly accommodating to their interests and those of the developers and landowners they represent. It has become evident that these developers and attorneys do not have Caroline County's best interests at heart. What's even more disconcerting is that some of our officials not only tolerate this behavior, but actively engage with these attorneys without legal representation on behalf of Caroline County. Decisions appear to be made without consulting the attorney, whose role is to provide legal guidance to safeguard our county's interest. At no point should a private attorney be asking our planning director if he thinks the county attorney should be involved. That's up to the attorney to decide. Furthermore, we have discovered that some of these email exchanges have occurred through private email addresses, some of which raise questions about their origins. Why are county officials conducting county business using their personal email? What is being communicated through these private channels? We must know. In the interest of transparency and the well-being of Caroline County, I respectfully request that all matters related to projects involving these entities be suspended until a comprehensive investigation can be conducted into these grave concerns. We must pause and allocate the necessary time to fully comprehend the extent of these unethical practices. It is our responsibility to ensure that our government consistently acts in the best interests of its residents, free from any undue influence or questionable dealings. Caroline County deserves a government that upholds accountability, transparency, and remains free from the shadow of powerful interests. Let us unite in our efforts to uphold these principles of democracy, ensuring that our county continues to be a place where the voice
Thank you, sir. Is there anyone else who would like to speak as part of public comments?
Yes, Mr.
Yes, ma'am.
Chairman.
Would you just state your name and your voting district when you have a chance?
Teresa Satterwhite from the Western Carolina. My question is to the Board of Supervisors. I've talked to a lot of people in Caroline, and no one seems to know what's going on with the data center. I don't know why this communication is not getting through, but it's not. People can't come to these meetings. A lot of people don't have a way to come, but does that mean that they should not be informed? I didn't receive any information on this from my supervisor, and a lot of other people, they just say, I didn't know that was going on. And I don't think it's because they don't care. I think they're just not being told enough by the Board of Supervisors. Each individual, we used to have small meetings and everybody would go to those because they were close to wherever they were located and they could discuss it, but that doesn't happen anymore. That's gone by the wayside. I think the public needs, Caroline County public needs more information on these important issues. The matter pertaining to the data center must be discussed much further so that all the people of Caroline County know and fully understand what's going on. I don't think this is happening. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Is there anyone else who would like to speak regarding public comments?
Good evening, Mr. Thomas Board.
Good evening.
My name's Karen Lambert, Reedy Church District. A couple of things. Wasn't really planning on speaking tonight, but I understand the state fair is there. I am not that dense that I think it will leave. Didn't want it here, but it's here. Trying to make the best of it. The weekend was absolutely horrible. Again, traffic took me an hour and a half to get home from Ashland going the quickest way. They were having to reroute traffic up to Carmel Church and down Signboard. Traffic was just stopped on 54 and 301. Not fun. And the past couple times I've talked about the self-service, this time I actually could not even have any cell service. I could not text as well as could not make phone calls or use any, hotspot thing, which is I couldn't get out my driveway. I couldn't have called for help. I couldn't have texted for help. And that went for my neighbor also, who happens to have a business booster on the outside of her home. She had no cell service either. So I don't understand why we don't make the fair have supplemental cell towers, because they exist and I know the other state fair used to use them all the time. Then also about the concerts, it was better this year thanks to the sheriff's department. But as far as being told that some of us lied, we did contact our supervisor and a number of us got no response. We asked the county to supply us with the data from last year that Kevin and Reggie gathered. It was gathered usually early during the concert. We asked for the written numbers and we were told they did not exist. So I don't know what they were, but the sheriff's office has done a great job in responding when we call the sheriff's department, but we don't think we should have to continually wonder and wait of when that's going to happen, that they should be held much stricter as far as the numbers. I guess that's all I have to say right now. So
Thank you, Ms. Lambert. Is there anyone else who would like to speak as part of public comments? Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir. Board members, how y'all today? Two hats today. First of all, citizen. Don't know a lot about data centers. I haven't seen no.
Mr. Mayor, before you start,
Yes.
I'm going to restart your time, but
Okay.
just for the record, would you state your name and your voting district?
Yes. Mark Gaines, Bowling Green.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. I'm used to sitting behind there and doing the same thing, so I forget out here. Anyhow, data centers. I don't have a lot of information. I don't know a lot about them. I don't know, something that, education on these things might work a little bit better, especially for me. I had a little bit talk with one gentleman, something about fiber optic lines and stuff, but still, I just don't understand it. Data centers in the county is probably a good thing, generates money, like you say, because it's a business, you get the tax revenues off of it. But it needs to be in certain areas that fit it, and what those areas are, I really don't know. But being out in the rural area, and back roads, and destroying farmlands and riversides and stuff, I don't think it's there. We have 95 great access to the roads. To me, that's my decision on those. Now I put my other hat on. Hi, I'm Mark Gaines, Mayor of Bowling Green. I just like to thank you. I don't know if all y'all are aware of it, but we had issues down at the sewer plant where we lost our superintendents. I had a emergency MOU drawn up, and it was accepted, and we signed it, and y'all are now temporarily running our water and sewer plants, and I really appreciate it. The expertise from Joey and his people is really shown good. The problems that we've got with, that we have with the plant has been brought forward. DEQ has been involved with it. They're satisfied with what is going on, and I know y'all hopefully have an MOU coming towards you in front of you next board meeting, to where we can all look at y'all taking it over permanently, and then sending it to the council and getting them to vote on it. But I think it's great. It's really working good. I commend your team, and you should too as well. Thank you all. Have a good night.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, ma'am.
Good evening, Tammy Gaines, council, ex-council Bowling Green, citizens of Bowling Green. I want to start with just saying I'm appalled and shocked at the information that was let out tonight about the emails, the private email accounts, and that's all I'm going to say about that. I'd like to address Mr. Wilson Gary. He was very supportive of me when COVID came around. He's a big advocate for the county. I feel in all my confidence that he will do the right thing for this county. I feel that Mr. Wilson has done a tremendous job in supporting this county and doing what's right for the county and its people. And I have all my confidence in him. I'm a little disturbed about this issue being voted down twice and coming up again for another vote. I totally don't understand that. I've been on that side and I'm standing on this side tonight. With just a little bit of information about these data centers that I've been able to research in the last few weeks, I find out the United States has 5,375. we have 4 million people. Germany falls right under us. They only have 522 data centers, but they have 83 million people. India, the most populated country, 1.4 billion people. Data centers, 151. China, 1.4 billion people. They have 448 data centers. Again, to reiterate, the United States has 5,375. Majority of those are in Northern Virginia. We don't want them south. This is a rural county. We want it to stay rural with our rural preservation. They only employ 5 to 30 people at data centers. You want to send all our manufacturing jobs overseas. That's where all our people have jobs. Data centers, again, only employ 5 to 30 people. Please consider the people of Caroline County. Please consider our farmland. Consider our farmers. Think about Maxie Broadus and what he did for this county. Save our farms.
Thank you, Ms. Gaines. Anyone else want to speak as part of public comment?
Good evening. My name is Gerald Castleberry,
Good evening.
and one of the points I'd just like to bring up is that I was greatly disappointed recently when the tiny homes project was shot down. And I understand that revenue was one issue that was shot down, and the tiny homes would have provided homes and jobs for a lot of homeless people right here in this county that is greatly needed. And I also hear the cry that we need more revenue for our schools. You know, for the past 20 years, I hear that every year from every politician under the sun. We need more money for our schools. More money will not help our schools. Greater leadership and morality, once again instilled in our schools, will increase the schools, not revenue. And with all that being said, I would just encourage each one of you to look back at your decisions that you make. Don't let revenue be the criteria that you make your decisions. Look as to the quality of life for your citizens. Look at to the people that are hurting in this county and what we can do for them. Don't look for revenue as the baseline that everything you make your decisions based on. Look a little bit deeper at that. Look at the heart and soul of your citizens. And for that, I thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Castleberry. Mr. Castleberry, before you go, what district are you in? Voting district, or?
I understood it to be, if it's applicable, but I'm not of a voting district. I'm the religious district of Carmel Baptist Church.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
If that makes sense.
That's fine.
Hi, am I able to speak on behalf of someone else and myself?
No, ma'am.
No,
Just yourself.
Just myself. I
Yes,
cannot
ma'am.
read a letter from someone that was not able to attend today.
Either or.
Okay. This is for Stephanie West. I am reading for.
And you are.
Excuse
And you
me?
are.
I am Crystal Teets.
And what voting district are you in?
I'm in Hanover County,
Okay.
a lifelong resident to the area.
Okay. Thank you. We just need that for the record, and I'll start you all.
Okay.
And the person you're reading the letter from is
Stephanie West,
from Hanover County also?
Caroline.
Okay.
I'd like to express our strong opposition to the proposed comprehensive plan amendments, rezoning of the Mount Airy land from rural preservation. My name is Stephanie West. I was born and raised in Caroline County and am writing on behalf of my parents who own 44 acres along the North Anna River off Hewlett Road and have resided there for the last 40 years. I'm also writing on behalf of our neighbor, Tim Middlebrook, who owns 113 acres adjacent to the proposed data center site. He's an interested party whose family has resided on this land for almost 200 years. Both parties will be significantly and irreparably impacted by the proposed project. Non-resident land speculators, specifically Mr. Litt Thompson, are making successful strides to mold the comprehensive plan to serve their own agenda. I recently came across a video where the attorney who represents both Mr. Thompson and the data center developer spoke to an audience of supervisors about land use regulations. Her law firm defines spot zoning as a zoning decision that's not in support of the overall comprehensive plan and something that is done for a particular landowner and against the interest of the citizens in the community. Clearly, a distinction without a difference. Revisions to the comprehensive plan should be guided by authentic community input on a level playing field, free from manipulation of land speculators and developers attempting to skirt around accusations of spot zoning. Mr. Thompson's highly speculative Washington, D.C. South and the resulting land grab is being used as the carrot to solicit data center developers and others, mega corporations. I have no doubt that his zoning approval would have sunk from its inception had the community known of the eventual plans to cannibalize the surrounding rural areas, burden our scenic waterways, and ultimately displace our historically Black communities along Jericho Road who have resided there for generations. In this pitch to attract data center hyperscalers, he boasts the surrounding pristine virgin land with 7 miles of river frontage, but in the same breath is soliciting high-impact developers to destroy it. Buzzwords like sustainable and green are used, yet he clear cuts right up to the riverbank, creates massive amounts of stormwater, considerable light and noise pollution, and encourages high-density sprawl. I implore you to reconsider this impending blight that will permanently change the rural fabric of this area. With respect to the text amendments being addressed today, the maximum 95-foot building height is absurdly out of place, and these buildings will stand significantly higher than our most mature and abundant trees, which are few and far between after aggressive clear cutting on this site. The minimum setback of 130 feet to neighboring properties is the equivalent width of 14 parking spaces. These buildings will tower over neighboring homes and will be highly visible to many residents. The required natural buffer is 40 foot, is insignificant.
Thank you very much. Yeah, it was. I'm sorry. Ms. Hodge? 1 second.
I'm sorry.
The public comment part is just public comments, not related to the public hearings we're gonna have later.
I understand.
Chris, if you could be a little more demonstrative next time, I'd appreciate it. Ms. Hodge, go right ahead. Had nothing to do with you.
No problem. Good evening, Chairman Thomas and members of the Caroline Board. My name is Mary Hodge, Bowling Green District. I think one of you was right on point at the September 26th meeting that many here are representing developers and their deep-pocketed lawyers. In fact, it is quite evident that an attorney is actually writing motions on behalf of you. And not only is this person orchestrating county actions on her many clients' behalf, but she is playing our planning director as her first violin as well. I don't know.
Ms. Hodge, address your comments just to me, please.
Okay,
And refrain from references to other people, if you would.
okay.
Thank you.
I don't know, sir, but is it common practice for a developer's attorney to write documents on behalf of county staff regarding master plans for development or writing motions for supervisors to make? Unsurprisingly, there are many questions surrounding the results of the recently released FOIA documents concerning not only some of the Caroline County supervisors' interactions with developers and their claws on the county, but also actions I wonder may be inappropriate for our planning director, who appears to be currently developing a bromance with Mr. Litt Thompson as they work on aligning their vision for utopian Carmel Church Station. This is the property that still stands empty today. Hang on. It is a county supervisor's job to hold a vision reflected by the people who elected them. Planning directors are staff hired to discern projects in an impartial manner. I was quite taken aback several months ago when the director approached myself and some others after a planning commission meeting and wanted to know why we were not in support of data centers. He proudly used the massive 6,000-acre S-Power in Spotsylvania as an example, boasting that developers have big pockets and will give us whatever we ask for they are so eager to gain approval to advance their motives. In another email, County Economic Director's correspondence suggests Mr. Thompson's vision of Carmel Church Station as looking like the futuristic Jetsons, but with graffiti-covered coal cars passing through, giving a not-so-flattering opinion by humorously calling this project a boondoggle. This is the property that still stands empty today and was rejected before it was rezoned by transportation officials as a train station. However, it continues to cost the county and on a composite index and drain UNI tax dollars as the state, noting the value of the past rezoning reduces the amount of money it sends to schools. This is nothing personal, but I hope you realize that we are watching and listening and paying attention. And yes, we are mad as hell.
Thank you, Ms. Hodge. Anyone else who'd like to speak as part of public comment? Anyone else who would like to speak as part of public comment? Take your time.
Hi, I'm Ashley Parks. I am in the Reedy Church District. I'm a Jericho Road. Sorry, I'm real short. Thank you. I'm on Jericho Road, Reedy Church District. I don't really have a speech. I wrote some stuff down, but I just want to come say I don't know. I've been in Caroline for a few years. We looked around in other counties, and Caroline was what we were looking for, little land or a lot of land with a little house. And Caroline was the place, one of the only places that offered it from here all the way up past Stafford. And I feel like maybe you're forgetting that most of the people in this county aren't after a lot of money. We're not after extravagant things or lavish things. If you go out, look out in the parking lot, most people have pretty average cars. We have pretty average houses. We're living a simpler life, and that's what we're after, especially in a time where there are a lot of people that are chasing the money and the revenue and the economic development and all of that. Not that we can't grow, but we're not after that. We're not big city people. We want to be in the country. This is what makes Caroline great, and what makes rural preservation so important, especially in a time, if you look the last 10 years across the nation, farmland is steeply declining, and that trend is true in Virginia as well. So our desire to preserve that and keep our farmers employed is real and important to us. And I would hope that we have a board that it's also important to them. And when you're thinking of things to develop or create for this county, that those priorities for the citizens, the ones that have elected you and hired you and put you in this job, that's what you are defending for us, and not bending to people that are after the money, want to come buy farmland for cheap and then sell it to make a lot of money off of it after they've changed zoning, and are going to completely ruin the essence of our county, and specifically Jericho Road. And it's honestly mind-boggling to me that it's ironic, really, because we don't even have internet on Jericho Road, and you're talking about building a data center. Mount Airy and Hewlett don't even have sidelines or center markers, and you're talking about putting 7 years of construction traffic on those roads. I travel Hewlett very regularly, sometimes daily, with my children in the car, and I have passed more than one lost 18-wheeler on Hewlett, and it is honestly terrifying, because the road is so narrow. So to think about having wide loads or dump trucks or heavy equipment moving up and down those roads for the next however many years, it seems so irresponsible that you would even consider putting it there, especially without any input. And I hear that you have other people that maybe are reaching out to you to say that they want these projects, but have you reached out to any of the other people that live and travel these roads daily to ask what our opinion is? So I'm here to make mine known. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Park? No, I said thank you, Ms. Park.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you. Call me back.
Reedy Church. Is there anyone else who would like to speak as part of public comment? Anyone else would like to speak as part of public comment?
I'm Mark Atkinson. I live in Charlesburg. And I just heard, yes, sir,
Western Carolina.
That's the Western Carolina.
Western Carolina.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You could restart him and give him his 6 seconds back.
Give me my whole 6 seconds. I just heard for the first time tonight that the Board of Supervisors has in fact made a final decision and is in agreement that you all want these data centers. And I just want to say, I personally don't believe in magic wands. I keep seeing local governments, not just in Caroline, but every place I've ever lived, the local governments are always looking for some magic wand to solve all their economic problems. If we just get a sports stadium, if we could bring in a casino, and now the new thing is these data centers. But I think there are a lot of questions about these data centers, and I've told Supervisor Thomas that my mind is not totally made up. I'm open to arguments, but it seems like the Board of Supervisors isn't open to arguments. You've made your decision. You believe this is the way to go, and we're going to do it whether the citizens want it or not. Now, Supervisor Thomas very kindly shared this information about the meeting that's going to be from the Sierra Club at Mary Washington University. I'm going to be there. My wife is going to be there. Most of our neighbors are going to be there. How many supervisors are going to be there? One? That's all we need to know. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Atkinson. Is there anyone else who would like to speak as part of public comment? Anyone else who would like to speak as part of public comment? Hearing none, public comment is declared closed. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for your comments and your time and attendance. Our next order of business is the public hearing for the transient occupancy tax. Is Mr. Bassoon here, or Mr. Parton's going to handle that, or David's going to handle that? Mr. Parton, go right ahead. David, I take it, is going to be here to answer questions. The reality is we are matching our ordinance to the state, and that's why we're here.
Yes, sir. You've summed it up nicely.
Excellent presentation, wasn't it?
That's right.
Thank you, Mr. Parton. Board members have any questions of Mr. Parton or the commissioner's representative this time? And basically, again, for those in attendance, the state has changed the way the transient occupancy, that's when you stay in a hotel, there's a tax applied that goes to the county for certain economic development things, tourism, and those sort of things. So we're just matching our regulation with the state, which is kind of forced to do that. Any questions of Mr. Parton or Commissioner Revenue's representative? Thank you, sir. Hearing none. The public hearing for the change in Chapter 103 for the transient occupancy tax is now open. Is there anyone who would like to speak regarding this matter? Is there anyone who would like to speak regarding this matter? Is there anyone who would like to speak regarding this matter? Hearing none. Public hearing is declared closed. How does the board wish to dispose of this issue? Questions, comments, motion?
Make a motion, we approve the change to our tax code, chapter 103, to align with the state.
Thank you, Mr. Forehand. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion's made by Mr. Forehand, seconded by Mr. Black. Discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Motion carries unanimously. Our next public hearing is the proposed text amendment number 10, 2023, which is to create a definition for Planned Innovation Research and Technology Park, PERT. Mr. Hughes?
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the board. So at the September 26th board meeting, this ordinance was presented to you in the first reading. At that hearing, the board expressed concerns regarding setbacks along the rivers, internal setbacks, building heights, and impact on sound produced by generators. This revision before you tonight attempts to address comments provided by the board. The specific amendments that address the noted concerns are the inclusion of a 500-foot setback along rivers, the elimination of inclusions for rooftop mechanical equipment to the maximum building height of 65 feet, making the maximum height 65 feet inclusive of rooftop equipment, and also language that requires generators be muffled. Those specific items are found, the setbacks are on page 5G, item G on page 5, where there's the inclusion of the language that says, in addition to the RPA and RMA areas, a 500-foot setback is required along all rivers. On page 11, item G again, height, a maximum building height of 65 feet with a bonus of 1 additional foot for every additional foot of setback up to 95 feet. Is there, that language was there last time, and now the language reads inclusive of spires, belfries, cupolas, antennas, communication towers, water towers, ventilators, chimneys, or other appurtenances usually required to be placed above the roof level and not intended for human occupancy. And then the third item on page 12 speaks to the inclusion of generators being enclosed and having mufflers. So it reads now, any generator within 1,000 feet of an existing residential structure, place of worship, or school shall be enclosed and muffled for the purpose of mitigating sound. Those were the major items that the board asked to be included in the document at the last meeting, and so they are there now. So I'll be happy to answer any questions if you have any additional questions or concerns related to the ordinance.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Hughes. What we have done in the past is we've worked on this first reading several times. You got board input. Now we're having the public hearing. Before I open the public hearing, are there any questions of Mr. Hughes?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Are you the only one? Question? Okay. Go ahead, Mr. Sealy.
Page 3, section 4, item C. The storage of materials to be used in on-site production and or products made on-site, provided such materials or products are located in a fully enclosed building. Now, we talked about this at the work session because I kept my book from both work sessions on this. My concern still is
Page 3.
page 3,
4.
section 4, C.
He's trying to find it. Okay. Go ahead.
This is still on-site product creation. My concern is building of lithium battery packs and keeping them there. We do not inhibit anything to do with building of those kinds of materials. We'd say in another section that they can't store those backup batteries in those facilities, have to be kept elsewhere, but we don't talk specifically about, because this is an ancillary use and structure.
Would you like to remove that? I mean, it's identified as a special use. So if someone was going to come before the board and was going to have a use that was going to produce, say, lithium batteries, in your example.
Well, what if they just said they were going to package units? Would you have to know what they're packaging?
Yes, we would.
Well, let's let's make sure we all understand the process.
Mm-hmm.
We're right now creating a definition. there will be rezoning applications that will match up with this definition, but the board during the rezoning application always has the opportunity to restrict or make more restrictive any of these conditions based on that application, correct?
That is correct. And more specifically, let's say someone came in and rezoned 50 acres to the PERT designation.
Mhm.
And they came back and they said, okay, I have a company or business that wants to do storage of materials used in the on-site production of those products. They would have to apply for a special exception. So there again, that process requires a public hearing. And the special exception allows the board even greater control because the board can then impose specific conditions related to that application. So, Mr. Celia, your example, if a portion of their business, let's say, was to prepare lithium batteries, then the board could impose a condition that says lithium batteries are not allowed to be produced as a part of this special exception application.
Okay. The other was the on-site, it's J, on-site ancillary utility facilities. We talked about that at length, and I thought we were going to define that a little more. Because we go to the next section 5, and then we go to the approximate location and dissemination of existing and proposed structures, fencing, property lines, and ancillary equipment. We use the word ancillary sort of like it's something.
Right. And in that definition, the data centers are identified there. So it is specific to data centers. And so when you say ancillary utility facilities, that could be a water treatment facility. It could be potentially the generators. It could be some other piece of equipment that could potentially be on the property as well. There again, those are identified as special uses, and as applications come through the rezoning process, if it's an initial application, those are items that would have to be identified as a part of that application. So if there was, there again, if there was some ancillary use that we were going to object to, then we certainly would have the opportunity to object to that use as a part of the rezoning. And if it was going to come back at a later date, if they wanted to add something, a water treatment facility, a well, a water tower, a potential substation is a utility, then they would have to apply for a special exception. And so it wouldn't be a by right use. And there again, the board would have ultimate control whether or not to approve or deny that request.
And the definition of ancillary is a support activity because ancillary is an adjective.
That is correct.
I only know that because I just Googled it. Okay?
And then again, it's specific to data centers. So there would have to be data center use. And
I
it would
mean,
have an
we
ancillary.
say specific to data centers, but we've got a number of uses that they can actually, that are permitted by principal use. So it's not,
by right, though.
huh?
But it's not by right. They have to apply. We have the ability to deny all of those. They can ask for the moon, but it's up to us to determine what we agree with and what we don't. We can tighten the belt as tightly as we want. We can even deny it. That's up to us to deny it if we see that it doesn't fit. This is just simply a definition of what this would be. The final decision
of what can go in.
What can go in that. That's when we get involved. But the definition just gives us a guideline. That's all.
Okay. Page 8, B buffers.
Just pass it.
Buffer yards.
Buffer yards.
Yeah, go down. No.
Three.
It's up a little bit.
It's up a little
It's at the top of the page, middle of the page.
Up further.
Right now, he's good right there.
There you go.
You want that one? Yeah.
Buffer yard shall be provided to visually screen development from abutting residents residentially zoned or occupied properties, public roads, schools, places of worship, subject to the following standards. We had 300 feet in there, and now that blue change is deleted.
Was it 5?
That is correct. So essentially, the deletion of that means if there's any property today that would have to be screened. So rather than place a definitive distance now, if there is a residentially zoned property or occupied residence, school, or place of worship, then it has to be screened.
Yeah, but we had a distance before, and I thought because it was in blue, we agreed to it.
No, that was I honestly believe that 300 feet was put in there erroneously, because this is a more restrictive. Without the 300 feet, it's more restrictive.
And we want the move.
Cause the next one is giving you 40 feet for a buffer setback.
I thought I have in my in my notes that we'd agreed to 300 feet. That's the only reason why I brought it up, is I matched this up against what I had written down.
I think, Mr. Sealer, we did the 100 and the 200. That's where we got the 300 feet. It was.
I think that was water.
What the water?
That was water. So it wasn't a 300 feet here.
Right.
I recall.
So
that was on the distance from the water, I believe.
Right.
I'm just going through the anomaly.
Yeah, that's what I had on.
I didn't have
Do you have a suggestion for a distance?
Well, I thought that was our suggestion from the 26th, was 300 feet.
I know on our solar ordinance, it was.
See, and is
less than that.
solar considered an would solar be considered ancillary for the previous section, ancillary on-site?
Supporting use.
Yeah. So is solar considered ancillary use?
They could only use solar if it was going to be used directly for that facility. An ancillary use is specific to a principal
Okay, so they
use.
say they're gonna use it for that site, and I just found my note on solar. So I guess that's the question. Can they put solar on the ground on these sites if they have a big enough area and call that an ancillary use?
It could be their backup.
Well, one of the things that we understand that these are large sites, and we have thought about that a lot. And so one of the things is, as a part of the review process, one of the things that we have asked applicants to consider is proffering that out. Now, there's not a specific prohibition against solar.
I mean, I know we permitted it on the buildings, but I'm talking about auxiliary on the ground.
Right. No, I understand.
But I think again, in the process of rezoning, that's something we could proffer out or, deny based on the fact that they wanted it.
An applicant could request it, certainly. They could come in and say, hey, we want to have X amount of area set aside for solar panels.
So you take a site that's 1,800 acres. The facility takes up roughly 30 acres for a total facility. Would it be out of the question to say they want the rest in solar?
I think it'd be out of the question that we would recommend that, or.
Oh, we don't limit it to just on the buildings though. That's, I guess, my point.
Well, that's what I'm saying. The point is the board would say, we're not going to allow you to put,
But we agree that's an ancillary use.
That could be an ancillary use.
I would think it would, especially if they said we're using solar, battery backup, whatever, as our secondary use. Then it's an ancillary use, right?
It would be, yes.
But we would also, or the board also has the opportunity to say, we don't think you need more than 7 panels for, an emergency backup system.
Or identify.
or whatever that number
Yeah,
is.
identify the specific number of panels that you want to use for
Yeah.
backup
You can't,
energy.
you can't come in, say you're building something, research building, and then use the rest of your property for solar panels.
No.
You can't do that.
No.
You had a question, yeah?
So what do you want to do about the 300 feet?
We've got the ability to restrict that when it comes in rezoning. We could make it, 500 feet in rezoning.
Well, there ought to be something there that reminds us of what we want.
But what it does is it gives us the opportunity to, we may need 500 feet.
We may need 100.
We might need 150, but
if we don't
if we only put 300 and we need 500, then we've restricted ourselves.
Yeah.
But now we get the opportunity to make it whatever we decide is appropriate.
I think.
I don't disagree, but we're taking it out completely, so there'll be nothing there.
But in our case, less allows you to have more flexibility. If it says 300, there may be a case where 150 works, or that's a reason.
But shouldn't there
You
be
want a number. You want a
there
number
should
there.
be something that says a buffer will be determined by, I'm just saying, just taking it out gets rid of it completely.
Rewording.
You never revisit this because it goes away. 5 years from now, it goes, yeah, we should have had a number, we should have done something. I'm just saying it should say our occupied properties, there should be a distance to be determined by the type of application.
Bingo.
So I have.
Mr. McKenzie, does that work?
Well, before we go there, can I ask a question?
Okay.
The way it's written, it's more restricted. So if you put in right now, the way it's written, no matter what distance the residential property is, it requires a buffer.
Right.
So if you add a 300 feet in there, then that's why I think it was erroneously placed, because it's not clear as to, is that 300 feet from the property line? It's just not, it wasn't clear. So in order to make it more restrictive and make it more clear, and I think achieve the goal that the board was looking for, is to provide protection to the adjoining properties, then it says here, if you're adjacent to any of these uses, then you have to provide the screen. Regardless of whether it's 1 foot or 1,000 feet, you have to provide additional screening.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes, ma'am. Mrs. Long has a question. You got one more?
Yes,
No, I think I'm done.
on this same topic, under 1, after we go by buffer yards. So if we take out the 300, it read buffer yards shall provide a visual development from abutting residential zoned or occupied properties, public schools, roads, places of worship, subject to the following standards. Within the required setback, an undisturbed buffer shall be provided of 40 feet. We could simply reword that, shall be provided at no less than 40 feet as determined by the Board of Supervisors, or put something in that phrase to determine that we have flexibility, and then everybody would be comfortable. Because if it's one of the things in here that's allowed are educational facilities. Well, we don't necessarily need to block a pretty university building all the way around in the front by 300 feet. Maybe we do, maybe we don't. So can we rewrite it so it is very plain to anyone reading this that we have leeway depending on what the building is that we are approving or we are considering? Because it's not just a definition for data centers. It is a definition for research or development facilities, technology facilities, public water sewer utilities, educational facilities, offices for software or engineering or architectural development or planning, offices for educational, governmental development. There's lots of things in here. So I think when we go through here, we need to give ourselves enough flexibility to meet all these different projects that could go if they got rezoned under this definition. And let's not put blinders on and just look at the one project, but let's look at all of them. So we need to write it so that it's flexible. however you all think's best.
So, Ms. Long, the one thing I would say, this section, this per definition is going to be a division in Article 11 of the zoning ordinance under the conditional uses. So in Article 11, there is a provision right now that allows the applicant to ask for, or the board to approve alternative standards. So the flexibility is already built into the ordinance. And so if an applicant was to present an application, and let's say it's going in an area that has existing development that is compatible, and they didn't need to have the necessary buffers there. The applicant, as a part of their plan, would show, hey, our facility is going to be whatever it is, one of those permitted uses is going to be adjacent to existing development, and it's going to be compatible with that existing development. So we don't feel like we need the necessary 40-foot buffer. So we would ask, as an applicant, we would ask that on that particular property boundary, that buffer not be there. So the flexibility that you're looking for in being able to craft applications specifically to their location or area is there now. So that's just in the ordinance right now. It's in the section that it's going in.
Even though I don't see it right here, giving a leeway, it's under the subsection.
It is there. The applicant has the opportunity to ask for, let's say for some reason, every one of these items in this PERT district was problematic for some reason. That ordinance allows that applicant to essentially rewrite an entire PERT ordinance themselves, and that become the controlling document for that particular project. So, like I said, you've already built that flexibility into the existing ordinance where this new division will be a component of.
And then we have the ability to change it and tighten it up and move it around.
Yes, ma'am.
Well, it's not, and to clarify, I've gone back to the original one that came out of the Planning Commission.
Mm-hmm.
The ones that were at the Board of Supervisors before did say 300 feet, but the one that came out of the Planning Commission did not have 300 feet in it. Yeah, it had that 40 feet, of 40 feet, or 1.5 was there, but. So you're saying, and I think the board is saying, without the 300 feet, it's more restrictive because we have the option to do it either way. All right, can I do the public hearing now, and then we'll have some more questions?
Well, what did we do? What are we gonna do? What is the definitive answer to this? Because we haven't answered anything. We just agreed that it says 300 feet. It didn't come out of the planning commission. We put it in, which
We're gonna make that decision once we finish the public hearing. We're gonna go back to that. We've got that question, buffer yards, and you had another question that had some issues, right?
yeah, the solar panel stuff and how we were gonna delineate that.
Those are two we're gonna go back to once we do the public hearing. We're gonna make a final determination on those if we go forward. Thank you, Mr. Hughes. We'll declare the public hearing for text amendment 1023 to be open. Is there anyone who would like to speak to the text amendment which defines planned innovative research technology parks? Anyone who would like to speak to the text amendment? Is there anyone who would like to speak? Mr. Wright, how are you, sir?
Yes, sir. Chairman Thomas, Board, Mac Wright Jr., Madison District. My concern on this proposed changes to this is you're saying you allow a building of 65 feet with possibility up to 95 feet. Now, does that mean we need to now get ladder trucks and fire apparatus that can go that high? We ran into this many years back with Ladysmith Village. The roads were not big enough to accommodate the fire trucks, so we decided we needed ladder trucks so they could stay one street off, fight the fire. We spent over $1 million for 2 trucks. And to my knowledge, and I could be wrong, we no longer have ladder trucks. they were sold off for junk or excess vehicle. I'm not sure. But that brings to light, are you going to need to provide a fire apparatus that will go that high to fight a fire on the rooftop? If you're going to have solar panels or whatever you put up there. So that's my question as a citizen. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Is there anyone else who would like to speak regarding the text definition that we're faced with?
Kevin Collins, write-in candidate for Reedy Church District. Good evening, board again. Chairman Thomas.
Good evening, sir.
For a living, I write documents. That's what my job is. All day long, I review and write documents for computer automated software systems, validations, for a large pharmaceutical company. I'm not sure why it is taking so long to rewrite a document when concerns are clearly stated at each meeting, yet we continuously are coming back here to talk about this PIRT. There has already been one of these zones dedicated in the county, and we don't have a clearly defined definition. We now want to create 1,600 more acres along Jericho Road. We have no defined definition. I heard this evening that there's being studies done with county-funded drones.
Mr. Collins, it's just about the text amendment.
It is about the text amendment, sir. This has to do with the height of the buildings in the PIRT.
Jericho Road doesn't have anything to do with the text amendment.
Sir, I'm talking about the PIRT.
But you're talking about Jericho Road.
Designation of building height. And in reference to that building height, I'm using an example of the drone work that was done off Jericho Road. Our concern is not that I can see a data center from the river. It is the environmental impact. It is the sound impact. It is the property value impact. So when someone tells me that this does not have anything to do with this text amendment, it most certainly does.
Now, your comments would be more
95-foot tall building.
Your comments would be more appropriate during a rezoning at any particular place.
Sir, is the PERT designating 65 to 95-foot tall buildings?
If you talk about 65 to 95, you can.
Okay. They do not belong along any scenic waterway anywhere in this county. I have an email here talking about PERT. How can we be so sure that these organizations and lawyers aren't writing these documents for us? I've got a pre-application here for a data center company interested in Carmel Church. It was discovered under the Freedom of Information Act. They want a 2-story building. Why are we pushing for 95-foot buildings? Who is pushing that? Is it the interest of the county, or is it one of these developers who like to write lots of emails, aligning visions with private property owners, hounding representatives for smaller sized PIRT areas? Again, we have no designation for these areas. Questions keep being brought, and here we are to vote on it. I think the residents of Caroline County deserve a little more thought and effort from our planning department into this document that's going to define data centers, their usage, and ancillary uses like some of the supervisors have brought up. And I think it needs to go back to the drawing board. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Is there anyone else who would like to speak regarding the text amendment?
Hello, Mary Hodge, Bowling Green District. Good evening.
Good evening.
Given the fact that an outside attorney has written everything else self-servingly for the planning department, one wonders if this amendment should go back to the drawing board to ensure that this language is actually representing our county's safety and best interests. With that in mind, I would like to bring up some questions that I have on this document, which in some areas are still quite vague. Section 2, permitted uses. What defines research and development facilities? Could a government or private biotechnology lab operate within this zone? Section 3, special uses. Again, would research and testing laboratories be anything that would threaten the health and safety of nearby residents? Also, public utility generation. Does this include ground-mounted solar panel installations on the premises? What about a small nuclear reactor? Section 4, accessory uses. campus-wide centralized fuel storage or backup energy systems are not permitted, but does this clarify there will be no underground diesel fuel storage tanks or lithium battery banks on the premises? Indoor research and testing facilities. Will residents be informed on the potential dangers of any hazardous substance that could be released from these laboratories? Section 5, additional submission requirements. Dwellings, schools, and places of worship within a mere 300 feet. A former NASA scientist, Dr. John Liver, recently released a comprehensive sound study on data centers in Prince William County. He contends that the noise impact range of a new data center exceeds 2 to 3 miles and easily exceeds 60 decibels in the same distance. Now, we all love Caroline for our peace and quiet. However, my next door neighbor this summer ran some sort of generator or power washer almost full time over the course of an entire weekend. And I could not go outside and enjoy my property, nor even escape the unceasing noise indoors. Noise can have a horrific and horrible detrimental effect on all forms of life. Section 6, setbacks, and Section 8H, building height. A maximum building height was set at 65 feet. However, this may increase 1 foot in height for each foot in setback up to 95 feet. Section 8N, emergency services training. It was discussed that there should be one of these skyscraper type buildings become inflamed, local firefighters would battle the blaze from within the building. What are the potential dangers of toxic fume emissions to nearby residents if massive amounts of computer equipment, toxic batteries, and diesel fuel are burning and smoldering? What will be the evacuation distance proposed? Thank you for continuing to work diligently.
Thank you, ma'am. Is there anyone else who would like to speak regarding the text amendment?
Good evening, Crystal Teets here. Speaking from just great information online, Caroline County currently has approximately 3,390 acres of land zoned for industrial uses. Of this acreage, only about 859 acres are actively being used. Why are we taking more of our rural land for PERT? The comp plan years ago, when we had citizens working diligently over the course of a year plus to determine how we wanted the county to use the land. Development should be located in such a manner as to minimize impacts to the county's environmental resources, including but not limited to wetlands, steep slopes, highly erodible and highly permeable soils, and aquifer recharge areas. The vision to maintain the desired rural character of the county through open space preservation while providing sufficient designated growth areas to accommodate expected demand for business and residential growth. I bring my kids to Caroline County multiple times a week. This would be such an eyesore, and it's heartbreaking to even have you consider it.
Is there anyone else who would like to speak regarding the text amendment? Anyone else who would like to speak regarding the text amendment? Is there anyone else? Hearing none, the public hearing is declared closed. Board members' discussion, we had discussion on the solar panels and discussion on the buffer yard distance. How does the board wish to dispose of this matter?
Mr. Hughes? Mr. Chairman?
Yes, I was looking for Chief
okay.
Loftus, he's here.
Okay.
Mr. Black, you have the floor. Questions?
Yeah, just have Mr. Hughes. I just want the public to hear this. I think I know the answer myself, but with a PERT, let's say, you know, for me, I've said before, there's going to be areas where I think these things are going to be adequate, and then there's going to be areas where I don't think they're adequate. So if the PERT is approved tonight, are we as a board boxed in? So in other words, for example, on like building height or like a resource area like sensitive to a river, are we boxed in to say, hey, look, we need to go more stringent in this area, but we can go less stringent in this area because it's not a resource sensitive area, or it's kind of in a place that's near an industrial area. Are we boxed in by the PERT at that point, or can a special exception we say, you know, the height needs to come down in this area. Maybe we can afford to go a little bit higher in this area because it's, you know, in one of our industrial areas or near one of our industrial areas. That's my question.
So, no, you're not boxed in. Like I said, you have the opportunity. The PERT ordinance sets the baseline standards, and then as being a part of Chapter 11 or Article 11 of the code, then there are opportunities to negotiate or require additional standards. So if for some reason a data center or some other any use came in and wanted to rezone property adjacent or fairly close to a residential area, or even an industrial use that wanted to be close to a more commercial area, then through that process, we work to mitigate the impacts of those projects. And so because you have a by right use or ordinance standards does not preclude the board from seeking additional mitigation for those projects.
So I'm just gonna use, for example, the height, because that's one thing that we've been talking about tonight. So height says 65 feet. So I got one area, it's on or near a river. I don't really like that. And so we say, all right, the maximum you can be is 65 or something like that. Now, we can go to another area, even with a PERT, and then you're like, hey, maybe in this area, we can go higher than 65 feet, or, you know, the company's, you know, if the company says, well, this is our justification for why it's needed, and we as a board agree that, can we go higher in that area, but stay even go lower? And I guess what I'm saying is the 65 feet, can I go higher or lower than that based on my area where it's going?
You can.
So what we're saying tonight, even though people think that this is like, these aren't hard and fast rules, is what I'm trying to say. So I got one project in one area. I really don't even like the 65 feet. I want to go down to, I don't know, just whatever, 40 feet. Yeah, 30 feet, 40 feet, something like that in that area. But in this area, you know, we can go up from the 65. So I can go either more or less restrictive based on an area. That's what you're saying.
That is correct.
So I guess my second question.
I just want to clarify this.
This is Mr. McKenzie, the county attorney.
Yes. So just to be clear, you know, this is not a special, you know, for the data center example, that's a permitted use under the rezoning. So the rezoning could come in and you can't put conditions on it like you could for a special exception use. They would make proffers, and if those proffers weren't acceptable to you, then you would vote against the application. But you can't demand proffers from an applicant. Now there's the special standards that Mr. Hughes is referencing, but I just want to make clear that it for the record that, you know, these are rezonings that we're talking about and not special exception applications.
Right.
And so you can't place conditions on it like you can a special exception application. They're going to apply to rezone to PERT. These are the standards for PERT. If you don't think that this is a good location for these standards and they don't offer any of these alternative proposal, then you would be unsupportive of that application.
So I'm hearing though.
Well, I'm confused, Jeff, and I think you are too.
Yeah, I feel like I just got two different answers because
you get my point. Yeah.
But I have a potential solution that can make us all.
All right, I'll go for that.
And I agree 100% with Mr. Black, and I like Mr. Seeley's ideas as give it some flexibility. Anything in the PERT, I think, should be our hard and fast stuff. However, the topography of parcels,
that's my point,
in this county could be vastly different. I mean, just looking at the three in my head off, you know, one off Drawbridge Road, one off Jericho Road, and one off Stonewall Jackson, the topographies are all three different. So my suggestion is let this document be silent or reference that the heights or setbacks will be addressed in the zoning application, because I think we've made this harder than what it is for every other piece of development that we've done, in the hopes of making it easier in the future. But
That's a good idea.
let the project fit the topography of and the setbacks of the site, by letting it be silent or just reference some general things that it must be addressed in the rezoning application, which we're at all. I mean, does that make sense? Is that going to make it easier?
Mr. McKenzie?
It makes sense, but I need to go back and address Mr. Black's confusion, because what Mr. McKenzie is saying is correct. And I think the point he was trying to make is, through the rezoning process, the board can't, at a public hearing, impose a condition.
Correct.
The way the process works, though, when applications come along and an applicant shows up for a pre-application meeting and they say, I want to have a 65-foot building, and we say, well, in this particular area, that building is not appropriate, then they would amend that GDP or their proffer statement to say, we're not going to have a 65-foot building. So I don't want you to be confused to think that we don't have the ability as a county to have flexibility to
GDP is the general design plan.
Generalized development plan.
Yeah, okay.
So we don't have, I don't want you to think that we don't have the flexibility to negotiate and massage cases to their applicable situation. So I just wanted to be, I think the distinction Mr. McKenzie was making was special exception versus proffer. In a special exception, you can sit up there and say, we want you to have a blue building, and they have to have a blue building, if you condition that.
But in a rezoning, we can't say we want you to have a blue building. They have to say.
It would have to be proper as part of their GDP. That is correct. And that is part of the application process as we go through it.
But as in Mr. Forehand's compromise proposal, I have a site that has rolling hills. I want to build a building between those two hills in a valley. On one side of the hill, the building's only 30 feet tall, but in the middle, it's 95 feet tall. I'm going to have to come to you and say, when I do my GDP, my building's going to be 95 feet tall in the middle, right?
If they could meet the appropriate setbacks for a 95-foot building, yes, then it could be 95 feet in the middle. That is correct.
So is it better to have no definitions in this and make them all in the rezoning, as he's saying, or have definitions in this and then make the applicant modify his application every time or each time we get one?
And the basis, when I looked at how Ashburn does it, and Ashburn, we're looking at large parcels for a potential campus, 6, 8, 10 buildings. They will rezone a 5-acre parcel for a data center, and then they put height restrictions, setbacks, and it changes for every one,
right? To
meet the general development of that specific area, and I, looking at that, I think honestly, I think I'm sure they have something generalized for them. I didn't get that far into it, but I did see that and was able to pick that out, that they do that each parcel differently. And it's, again, if it's a downhill slope and there's a 52-foot building, then they'll say that, all right, you can have a 55-foot building with a setback of, 82 feet or something like that, for this parcel. Anyway, that just a thought. So, thank you.
I kind of liked it, but Ms. Long, go right ahead.
Yes. And does that set also for all the setbacks? Like we had said down here in FG, it says for RPA and RMA areas, a 500-foot setback. Well, I live over on the Rappahannock, and I could build a house 200 feet off the river edge. But again, could we go either way? Say, if, again, my example of an educational building. Say Mary Washington wanted to put a campus down there. We have definitely wetlands, say on the ORC property, but you could put some nice pathways within 100 foot of that MRA without coming out 300 feet for students to walk and enjoy and study, hopefully. So are we also able to play with these? Are we set with setbacks? Because you said something about the 40 foot being able to be increased or decreased. So all the setbacks would be able to be adjusted?
So, like I said, it is a part of Article 11 of the zoning ordinance. Within that,
Liam, move your mic so we can hear you better.
sorry, within that section of the ordinance, the provision is there that if an applicant asks for an alternative standard, the board has the ability to either grant that alternative standard or not to grant that alternative standard. If an applicant came along and use Mr. Forehand's example, if the topography was such that there could be some unique design characteristics or specific to that property, then that applicant could ask for that, and then the board could certainly grant that. And those would become the governing documents for that individual case.
Can we ask for those?
As a part of the negotiation process and as a part of the application process, you can ask for it. Yes, you can. What the attorney was making, what Chris was saying is that you can't demand from your dais, you can't condition that. So this process is.
You mean like when I say, I'm not allowed to ask you to do such and such? And Mr. McKenzie always jumps up and says, you can't do that? That kind of thing.
Essentially, yes.
We understand you can't make demands on a rezoning application.
That is correct.
During the public hearing.
That is correct.
But during the process. There are times when,
yes,
you know, folks can say things about the project.
That is correct.
Okay. So, has that made more concern or less?
Yeah, I'm hammering down on this because I want to be like triple, quadruple sure. So if we have, and I did like Mr. Forehand's suggestion actually, but let's say that we have something that's very restrictive and the applicant says, hey, this is why you have 65 feet and this is why we actually need 95 feet. And our PERT says 65 feet. And it's in an area that we're like, hey, it's not very controversial. It's not near a waterway. It's, it's close to an industrial area. It's close to growth. Can we go, in that case, less restrictive? I guess.
You can.
So I can go more restrictive or less restrictive?
Yes. And the way that would show
no
up.
Matter where I am.
No matter where you are.
Or.
Yeah, I understand.
You don't have to have a PERT in that area at all.
Right, well, yes.
Yeah, it's up to us.
Yes, right.
So,
but
that's
I'm
why we
making
take it
sure-
individually.
I'm making sure for the public, I know, I'm understanding, so it's clear, that it's out there that, so we can take these on a case-by-case basis and nothing is automatic. That when they come in, yes, I'm hammering down on it over and over again, because I want to make that point that one application may be very different than the second application, that's different than the third application, so it's not a one-size-fits-all here.
Just tell us when the horse is dead. You think so? You good? Jeff?
No.
No, Black.
I mean, for now.
Okay. Jeff Seeley.
If you live in a subdivision, which is essentially what a PERT is, correct? We're gonna make it a subdivision. We're gonna make it a unique subdivision that you can only do certain things in, correct?
You're going to make it a unique district. I wouldn't use the term
Okay.
subdivision.
It's not a subdivision.
Call it a district, but you can only do unique things in it.
That is correct. You can do
So
specify.
to have something in a unique district, okay, you've got to have requirements that make everybody understand what they can and can't have. So what we're sitting here tonight saying is that we're writing requirements, but we're probably not going to follow them. You just said we could go higher, we could go lower. It doesn't matter who does it. It depends on where it is, who's got it, and what we do.
We're writing guidelines, I would think.
We're
You're
writing
an
requirements.
ordinance. Yes, but Mr. Seeley, in just about every rezoning case, I assure you that you've ever seen, there has probably been some negotiation towards some item in an ordinance. I would venture to say there are very few rezoning cases that come through the process where an applicant has stuck in, where that case is written or approved to the letter of the ordinance. So the current ordinance right now builds that flexibility in. This is not unique to this district. Every other use that is identified or every other CUP in Article 11 has that same standard. So the standard is not new for this district. That standard exists today in the current ordinance. If someone showed up tomorrow with a rezoning application for a PIP district, there are some guidelines in that PIP district. But if there were unique circumstances that needed to be addressed as a part of that case, then we would address them through that rezoning application, and you would mitigate for those impacts.
This has been this way for, well, since the ordinance was first written,
That is correct.
probably 30 years ago, if not more.
That is correct.
And again, we are, we're all focusing on specific issues because we have in our mind specific applications. But this is creating a definition, and each application will be voted on separately, will have its own planning commission meeting and public hearing, its own board of supervisors public hearing, where all of these details can be hammered out again on an individual case-by-case basis. Correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
I would agree with you until our recent history of we keep changing our minds. And this makes this worse because we agreed on something and then we didn't. And then we agreed on something else and then we didn't. So we write this, and I've spent a lot of time in this, probably more than anybody sitting up here. I've read this thing and marked it up 4 separate times.
Well,
I mean, I can go back and forth in this thing, and I asked some of my questions in the beginning to come back to solar panels, because we still haven't resolved what we're gonna do with that.
We still have those as notes to address. We're just trying to find the actual endpoint before
We have a whole lot of people looking at us about what do we really mean with this, because when they hear we can do whatever we want, then what did we write this down for? And we've never had this kind of scrutiny on anything before, because we've never had this kind of discord before.
Well, I would beg to differ. We've had this kind of scrutiny and we've had much worse discord than this. But the reality is, again, we are creating a definition. We're saying all 4-sided things are rectangles. We all agree. Occasionally there'll be a 4-sided thing that's called a square. It's different than the rectangle. That's where we are. It's still going to be the same kind of thing. I don't know how much simpler to make it. All squares are rectangles. All rectangles aren't squares. But the reality is, this is a definition of a 4-sided thing. During the rezoning issue, we'll have specifics of what it actually is.
So you're correct, Mr. Seeley. In the current one, and I've miscalled it. It's the Plan Unit Development, Article 11. It's Plan Unit Development. There are 5 identified Plan Unit developments that you can apply for right now. Within any of those 5, if there are unique circumstances specific to a case, then the board has the ability to accept alternative standards that are specific to that case. So this ordinance will become another division within the Plan Unit Development section where those same principles would apply. If there are unique circumstances that relate to an application that need to be addressed to mitigate an application, then that can occur with the board's blessing or with not. So, like I said, if anyone showed up with a residential development and they wanted to do something specific that was unique to a residential development, they came in and asked for this Plan Unit Development residential, they could ask for whatever particular requirements, bulk standard, meaning setbacks, buffer yards that they wanted for that particular application. And there are standards here right now in the ordinance. So this, you know, the fact that we identify these standards does not mean that we are just going to throw it away because someone asked. Because they may ask, it doesn't mean they necessarily mitigate the impact. And so the board might not agree with that. And staff would most likely not agree with that.
Okay, we still got the solar panel to deal.
So, you know, you can very easily, if you want to write a sentence that specifically says you cannot use solar panels other than for data center use, as a backup facility with no more than, you know, 25,000 square feet, then, you know, I just threw the number out there, whatever number you want, then you can do that. And I think that would address your concern about the larger panels. But I would tell you, if someone was going to build a very large solar field, then they would be building that probably with the intent of trying to sell that power generated from that. Yeah. And our ordinance has a specific definition for that type of use. And that use would not be an ancillary use in this ordinance. So you could not do that.
And if they connected to the grid, you would then be able to say you violated the zoning application you had.
That is correct.
Okay. So we are going to take the 300 feet that wasn't in the original one. We're going to take that out, which gives us the flexibility to making it more restrictive. And is there a sentence for solar panels? You want one, or you?
I think there should be one, so there's nobody anticipating they're gonna come and they're gonna put some monster solar field that comes with other issues.
Where do I?
Mr. Hughes, can you just generate a sentence and tie it back to, backup, emergency backup only?
They may want to power their own facility. Yeah, on the rooftop to do their own thing.
Well, rooftops.
Solar panels may only be used to power the facility and or emergency backup.
So I think
something like that.
Something like that. But so if you look at special uses under G, it talks about rooftop solar as a special use.
Mm-hmm.
Accessory use, I'm sorry. Accessory use. So you could there in paren say something like no solar panels in excess of, I don't know, what, 5,000 square feet will be used or maybe permitted, something like that.
Yeah, I mean, rooftop solar energy structures and, I was going to say, and yeah.
I guess, can I ask a question, clarifying question?
Please.
Is the concern, so the rooftop solar, you've got, I think we're talking about two different types of solar, and I think it might be helpful to clarify what we want to address. Solar panels on the roof of the structures and solar panels on the ground. Right now, the accessory uses speaks to solar panels on the use of the structures. And right now, the ordinance as written says you can put solar panels on the roofs of the buildings as long as it's accessory to the principal use. So that means, as written, you know, it would have to be accessory to the principal use of whatever your permitted principal use is. You can't have a solar farm on the roof as a separate principal use. The thing that's not specifically addressed right now is solar on the ground at all, and whether that would fall in within backup energy facilities, or I think it was utility on-site ancillary utilities, J. So if you wanted to clarify ground uses, you could probably put them in either one of those to say, you know, for example, D already reads backup energy and fuel storage facilities for individual buildings. This is limited to quantities of 120 hours. So, you know, you could put in a sentence that said, you know, solar panels installed as a backup energy facility are limited to, you know, a certain quantity or square footage, if you're comfortable setting that. Or you could put something in J to say on-site ancillary utility facilities. And then you could say, you know, we if those are going to be solar, these are the restrictions, or we're going to say, you know, excluding solar. Because again, as I think Mr. Hughes has already pointed out, solar is a defined, minor and major solar facilities, you all know this well because we went through it multiple times, are still defined uses.
Right.
But they are not permitted in any district in the county right now. So anything that would trip into that definition, minor or major solar facility, would automatically be prohibited because it's not a permitted use, principal use anywhere in the county. So, you know, if you were going to make an amendment, I would focus on those 3 sections. And I'm happy to continue to try to.
So
draft some
we
language.
could just say ground solar as approved by the Board of Supervisors. We do. We have a definition.
We have a definition, but we don't have an ordinance.
Yeah, but if they want to put up 10 panels, that's okay. But if they get to what the definition of minor is, then that's not okay.
Yeah, absolutely not. Because again, I think, you know, we got to back out one level to say we're talking about accessory uses.
Right.
So you know, to even be part of the conversation for solar in this PERT district, the only way it's even part of the conversation is if it's accessory to the principal use.
Right.
And I think, Mr. Thomas, to your concern, I mean, someone can't, you know, bait and switch as far as saying I want this and then starting a principal solar farm. That would be impermissible and violate the zoning ordinance.
Yeah, because once you got to what we defined as minor, even though we no longer have a solar ordinance, you get to minor and it's, oh no, that's not allowed.
Correct. So,
okay.
Yeah, the question is, as an accessory use, again, to recap, it is allowed on roofs. Right now, this says you can put it on your roof as long as it's accessory to the principal use. I think the question before the board now is, do you want to explicitly address the concern Mr. Seeley raised about what about an accessory use, either as
Just
backup?
leave it on the roof. Just leave it on the roof.
Roof is the only place it should be permissible.
So if that's what you wanted, you could put in something to say in both.
No, we're just saying we're just going to leave it on the roof. We're not even going to talk about ground solar. Unless the applicant has some sort of idea that he wants a backup facility of solar, and then we'll talk about it then.
Because by saying on the roof, it's pretty much saying that's the only place.
That's the only thing that you can come in by definition. All right, thank you. We took the 300 feet out of buffer yard. We've settled solar panels. I think those were, Mr. Black, your question was height back and forth. We can modify that.
Yeah, I mean, I was just using that as an example, but yeah, I mean, that's what I was trying to.
Mr.
I mean,
Ford?
yeah, that's it.
Thank you, sir.
I'd
Mr. Ford.
clarify, we can modify the setback from the RPA or RMA based on the project.
Yes.
Okay.
Any other discussion?
So,
Motion would be in order?
Chair, Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir.
So the other item we have not addressed is the exclusion of rooftop materials or mechanical equipment. So right now, there's an exclusion that does not permit anything above the height, such as cupolas, parapets, antennas, ventilators.
I thought we had said as long as it was screened in, they could put stuff on the roof.
That was the original ordinance, but the language has been added that excludes those as
at the first reading.
Exemptions.
That's why I would like just to exclude the height and make it by zoning request. Because again, Some will want 45, some others, if it's 2,000 feet from a roadway, no one's gonna see it, then maybe we could let it go higher. But it's, again, that's the basis of my suggestion, is that all these sites are gonna be different. And even buildings within the site, the ones that are more visible, we might want smaller ones that are back down in a hole. We may not really care a whole lot how many, if it's 10 feet taller than the one out front.
And if we're
so that-
saying they can have solar on the roof, then they can have other things, but it should be screened somehow to blend with the building.
Yes, I would agree with that. Yeah.
So the bottom line is, it's got a height requirement, including what's on the roof.
That is correct.
You're saying
I'm saying
take the roof height requirement off.
address the height, make this document silent to the height of the building.
Oh, totally.
And have that addressed specifically in the zoning application.
Okay.
Because of the varying topography of the different sites that could roll through here.
I like that, but I think Mr. Hughes was telling us that a definition was preferred.
No, you could certainly say height to be determined, by the Board of Supervisors at the time of rezoning, if that's what you prefer.
I mean, I would like, honestly, I'd like that along with the external setbacks. I'm fine with the internal setbacks, but the external setbacks, if I were gonna back off the north end, I would want it bigger. If it was a swamp that's adjacent to the Po River, that's 2,000 feet from the nearest roadway or house, then I might be okay with it being closer to the RPA. Again, different locations would warrant different restrictions and setbacks and heights and things like that. And I would just be reluctant to. I like the way documents are written and as a guide, but the more exceptions, and again, just adds issues later. But I like what we put down to be at least 90% of what we're going to want.
All right, so at the board's will, do we want to remove height from the building requirements?
Let's give Mr. Hughes a moment to come up, and Chris to come up with a definition on how to word that to protect us all.
Well, this is going to be removing words.
Well, and I think, certainly work with staff on this, but I think deleting the height wouldn't be my recommended approach, because I think we need to make clear that there is going to be a height restriction in this district. And I think that's particularly important because there are other districts in the county that authorize data center uses and have a height restriction of over 100 feet. And so we need to be cognizant of the fact that the other districts are now. Importantly, those aren't in the plan unit development ordinance. Those are separate districts. But I certainly think you need to. Obviously, height and setbacks are concerns. So I don't think it would be advisable to adopt the district without any stated any provisions addressing those concerns. I think if we're not going to do maximums or minimums, depending on what you're talking about, it needs to have some kind of language saying these are going to be established and you are going to have maximum minimums. I think one of the practical challenges is going to be, prospective applicants are going to call the planning department and say, I have no clue even what the ballpark is, whether I can build something to 200 feet or 20 feet or what. And the answer, I think, based on this session would be, you're not going to find that out until you go to the board and get their approval on your application. And, if that's the way you want to approach it, that's fine. But I think you'd have to put something in there to make clear that these are the rules of the game in this district.
Right, you could put something along the lines of setbacks and height would be dependent upon the individual site topography, comma, distance from roadway, visibility, buffers, et cetera. I mean, you could do the, which basically is everything we would look at anyway,
Right.
and it would be handled during negotiation. I mean, I get what you're saying, but at the same time, I see three different pieces of property in my brain right now that would have three different sets of rules and setbacks and heights. And that's creating my reluctance to say, yeah, let's put something down on paper.
Right.
Because then you have the negotiation from a you still have that conversation.
Mm-hmm.
You still have to have it because I guess we're not going to get around that conversation either way.
Right, and I think I recognize that concern and would have to think about how to draft it. I think, as it stands right now, the territory we've covered already as far as how you would approach one of these. I think you stated it, but it bears repeating. Each application is independent and site specific. So if you get one and you say, just based on the topography of this application, a building of any industrial size is not going to work, that's going to be your concerns stated, and ultimately probably the reason that you vote against the application being approved. There are mechanics in the PUD ordinance for you to set for an applicant to say, I understand you said 65 feet is your maximum. Here's why I think the site works to go higher than that. Or and right now they can say, I need to go higher, but I'm going to give you 1 extra foot up to 95. So that flexibility exists. But
That's what we had.
That's what you have now. I think what's being
had. Yeah, we took it out at the first reading.
Okay, that's not there anymore. Oh, I thought that's still there. Yeah.
It is still in here.
Right. So that flexibility is there. Now, I think, going one step further is what Mr. Forehand's proposing, which is we're not going to state anything about any even ballpark height, and it's all going to be case by case. And, I think we could look at revising. I think revising that here would be a challenge as far as just finding language that's clear for the record about what's being adopted. If we're going to go to the buffers and the setbacks.
And the height is on page 11. It's
yeah.
H.
But I think there is a fair amount of there. I guess just based on your ability to approve or deny any given application, that is a threshold requirement as far as heights and setbacks and things like that. And then they can be tailored somewhat. But if you want more control, I think you would have to go back and rewrite all those numbers, and effectively find a way to delete them and say, we're going to take these on a case by case basis. And I think one concern would be, is that going to drive things to the M1 district or other ones where you have a data center already allowed with a 100-foot plus height maximum? So that's probably more of an answer than you wanted, but.
Because you're saying there is by right for some of these on parcels that are already zoned, correct?
For M1, yeah.
Right.
Right.
Well, and the other part of that is we are proposing to bring an ordinance forward that says those by right uses in the M1, B1, and PIP districts would have to be developed in accordance with the PERT standards. So.
But I've got land right now in M1. I can start building a 100-foot data center tomorrow.
100-foot anything, yeah.
Yeah.
Or an air separation tower or a sawmill.
Yeah.
There are other things out there that are tall. Hell, a grain silo would exceed that.
Well, we've got the 65 to 95. How does the board want to go ahead?
And we could add some language to say, variance outside of this would be addressed out during zoning. That way it's at least written there that we address variances to this during the rezoning process.
And they're going to have the effort anyhow in the rezoning. So. Okay.
So could you just restate what you want? what you're thinking?
We could leave it, but there could, we could add a language to it that said there could be adjustments based upon topography, setbacks. Again, the list goes on that could change maximum minimums and things like that. Would that be
Like I said before, that language already exists
okay?
in the ordinance.
By definition.
Right. But in this section of the code.
Mhm.
So this section of the code was designed to give you flexibility. That is the basic tenet of the plan unit development ordinance, is that it allows you to customize and make adjustments as necessary.
Are we overthinking this?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
No more questions? Motions in order, or up, down?
What did we decide on setbacks?
That was in there. The 500-foot setback?
Yeah.
No,
The
we
one
haven't.
item we have not decided on are the exclusions for the rooftop mechanicals. Are you going to keep that in, or are you going to take that out?
As part of the height, that's what it was.
So, but it's more than just. I use rooftop mechanicals as a broad term. I mean, you could have a penthouse where there's no human occupancy or intended office space there, and it would extend potentially, above that limit. Right now, the way it's structured is 65 feet, maximum of 95. That's it. That is inclusive of parapets and everything. That's it.
I don't think it shouldn't include that, because you could have an antenna, as it says, antenna.
Right.
Or a communications tower, or a satellite dish.
I understand. I'm just saying that was the language that was requested to be put in. I said that's the one item we have not decided, is it going to stay or not.
Cut it out. I mean, that just
cut it out.
I think you have to allow them to,
Mr. Black, leave it in, take it out.
I mean, I guess to me, once again, it seems like we're overthinking this, because it goes back to what Mr. Hughes said, and that's what I was saying. When it comes to rezoning, a specific rezoning, he said we can go on a case-by-case basis.
I understood that.
So I guess my question is, why do we keep on, if this goes by a case-by-case basis, why am I continuing to argue this? I mean, what's the point? I guess that's where I am.
You're exactly right. And the only point is that
it just seems like we're overcomplicating this and working people up, because we haven't even gotten to a real rezoning yet. I mean, this is kind of like, it's not reality until we get a rezoning, and then that's the case-by-case basis.
pulling the cart before the horse.
Yeah. This is just four-sided thing.
Well, you want to set your standards for your district, though. I mean, it's actually not the cart before the horse. You need to set the standards.
Yeah, we need a definition, but we don't have anything to.
Right.
So applicants know what the goal is and what they're trying to achieve.
But we're not trying to fit this to something. We're trying to give people guidelines, so when they come in to apply, they know what the guidelines are, what you can and can't do, and if there's anything you want to go beyond, then there's going to be a problem.
Correct.
That's what this is
You
for.
You have to ask for permission. Yes.
Right. And then we make the decision that doesn't, so.
That's what we said before.
Right.
All right, so we're gonna take out the antenna. Yeah, not include that as part of the height. We're not gonna include that as part of the height.
So you're going to exclude it. It still
Correct.
has to be screened, but you will exclude it from it.
Correct.
Okay.
Which goes back to the language you had before.
Correct.
And the river waterway setback, again, that's per application 2. Correct?
Yeah, an applicant would have to ask that they be excluded from that if it's written, if it remains in. Correct.
And that's all they do as part of their rezoning application, just add that in their rezoning application.
Correct.
And then during the public hearing, we have all sorts of discussion about it from there. Okay.
Yeah, but my only point to that is you're going to, every application you see, you're probably going to see a request for that not to be included as a part of their application. Because right now there's already environmental restrictions. There's a 300-foot buffer right now with the RPA and RMA along water features. So
we've made it 500 feet to be more restrictive, but they're gonna come back with what you're saying and say, can you go back to 300 feet, which is.
No, it says in
No,
addition to,
it
so
says in
right now
addition
it's
to
800
800
feet.
feet.
You know, it's 0.6 of a mile away from a swamp.
Right.
Which I think is not practical.
That's not 0.6 of a mile, but.
Well, it's rough math.
800 yards would be 0.6 of a mile.
Well, it's 5,260 feet in a mile, 280 feet.
Yeah. I ran the quarter once, so I remember.
Mr. Black, are you okay with the
Take it
state
out.
recommendation of 300 feet back?
I mean, in the end, once again, I go back to this thing.
I know.
It's if we keep it in there, which, you know, there's going to be certain areas where I'm going to want a bigger buffer than in other areas.
I think.
So, I mean, but the applicant, if we keep it in there, I mean, I would like to keep it in there and just say, we'll take it on a case by, but it's all on a case by case basis. So you keep it in there, they can come and say, you take it out. I mean, it doesn't, we keep it in, they come to us in an area where we say, hey, we don't really need that kind of buffer in this area because we're not near a waterway. Well, then you take it out because it doesn't, you know, it
Right.
doesn't even make sense, or it's near a swamp and it's not like a, you know, it's not like a waterway where people have nice homes and they want to keep it preserved as more so than the swamp area that's near an industrial area. So I guess to me, whether we keep something in and take it out, really in the end, what Mr. Hughes is saying is, does it really matter?
That's what Mr. McKenzie said, and he's the county lawyer, so.
I think, I mean, I don't mean to contribute to the, you know,
But you're gonna.
drawing this out, but I'm going to.
But you're good.
Yeah.
Figured as much.
So, you know, I think it's been mentioned, but obviously the goal would be to keep the uniformity and to limit adjustments to this. So, you know, to Mr. Hughes' point, if there's something in here that everyone anticipates to be requested is removed time and time and time again, it shouldn't be in there. Now, to your point, Mr. Black, if there's something where you think, no, this would be a useful standard in many cases, then it should be in there and you can use the flexibility of the PUD to alter it if you need to. But I think the guiding principle should be, this is generally what we're looking for, and we're going to make tailoring fits as permitted under the PUD ordinance on a case-by-case basis. But if there's something in there that you think is unnecessary or inappropriate or wrong, then obviously it shouldn't be in there. So here I hear you articulating, you know, this 500 feet is along all rivers. So, you know, the RMA and the RPA applies to, you know, water bodies in addition to rivers. So this is specific to rivers.
Okay.
And if it's something where you think, no, this is, in many cases, this is what I would want to see on an application that I would support rezoning from ag to PERT, then it would be a reasonable standard to include. You know, and if it's not something you want to use, don't put it in.
And we can delineate between like flowing a river. I mean, you can delineate between a flowing river and a swamp area, right?
I mean, this says along all rivers. Yeah.
Along all rivers.
Yeah. I mean,
and there's cases where we, yeah.
But some rivers are 10 feet wide in this county. There's one running beside Ladysmith Village that 800 feet would make the whole development go away.
Yeah.
Just to be clear.
And the 300 feet is a standard throughout all of our zoning.
Well, that's a DEQ
because that's right. That's a state standard. So we can go with the state standard of 300, and when the case calls for it, we can always add more. Most of them, I think what you just said is most of them are
Well, like, again, I mean, to be a little clear, like, you couldn't just add it because this is a rezoning, so that you'd have to say, boy, this is not a good site for me because I wouldn't be supportive of it because it's too close to a river.
Right.
And, absent some kind of proffered conditions that address that concern, I'm not going to be supportive of the application. That's how this rezoning process works. Yeah.
Okay, back to 300. And I think we understand where we are. Was there a motion?
Well, 300 is already required by state law. Yeah.
That's what we're saying.
Would the board be willing to go to, I mean, because if we can make I understand what Mr. McKenzie's saying. Could we add the, because I thought in the last meeting it was total of 500. I was looking for a total of 500-foot buffer. And I didn't realize it was 500 plus 300 and now 800. Can we go down to a total of 500? So that would add our 200 in there. So you go 500 and then take it, because you want to say it has to be you want to be in a close proximity, right? Is that what you're saying?
But you have the chance to make it 500 when the rezoning comes.
I mean, I guess in the end, and I was talking to Mr. Forehand about it, whether it's 500 or 200 or 100 or whatever, I mean, the applicant can still come to us and say, this doesn't make sense for this area, right?
Right.
Or we can even say in this rezoning, like, this is such a resource sensitive area, like 500, like, we can go more strict, correct?
Well, I mean, that's,
No, you vote
again.
No, you vote no.
Yeah, right, you vote no, right.
That's what I was
Yeah,
referencing
yeah.
when I say these are all site specifics.
Right,
You're gonna get an
okay.
application for a site, say, I want to change the zoning there. And
So
you're gonna say,
we're arguing over something to me that,
Right.
yeah,
right,
it doesn't,
so,
but I would like to send a message that at least like we're going to look at areas that are in resource sensitive areas much more stringently than areas that are not. And I know you can make an argument for everything's a resource sensitive area. I get that, but there are definitely some areas in Caroline that are on the, certain rivers that people live along where, yes, people don't have expensive property on the South River. It's a tiny river, but the North Anna, the Mattaponi, the river, the Rappahannock, those rivers are much wider and those are much, people go with those for recreation, people have nice homes on them, and I understand why they don't want a 200-foot data center in their backyard.
So, Mr. Black, if you look under section 5, additional submission requirements,
Mm-hmm.
item 5.
What
Or
section are we in?
Item 6, I'm sorry.
What section again?
Section 5 is on page 4.
7.
Number 6. Demonstration through project siting and proposed mitigation. If necessary, that the development mitigates visual impacts and promotes harmonious development to adjacent properties, designated scenic roads or rivers, or historic property designated in the Virginia or National Register of Historic Places.
Keep going.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So when you speak, making sure that we're going to ensure that we're looking at these more stringently, I think this language, that's a submission requirement. The applicant has to demonstrate that
I get it.
that they are going to mitigate any potential impact on those resources.
Right. I mean, to me, I'd rather just keep the 200 in and make 500, but I mean, the applicant can come in front of us and say, hey, look, would the board be opposed to that? So you make a total of 500? And then the applicant's gonna come either way anyway. I mean, the writing, we've been told a million times, doesn't really matter that much.
Okay. That sounds good. So you got additional 200 feet?
Yep.
That makes it 500 total.
Yes.
And the applicant may require or may request removing the county's 200 feet, but they cannot remove DEQ's 300
Right,
feet.
that's state law.
No, it cannot.
All right. So changes, we took out buffer yard, we took out the 300 feet there. Solar panels are roof only. Height is still 65 to 95 and 500-foot buffer around rivers. Those are changes we made, discussions we had. Any other discussions? Motion would be in order? One way or the other?
Mr. Chairman, I'd move that we, approve the, text amendment 10-23. An ordinance,
With the changes we
with
discussed.
with the changes that the board has.
Is there a second to
requested.
the motion?
Second.
Okay, motion's made by Mr. Underwood, seconded by Mrs. Long. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay.
Nay.
Mr. Forehand, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mr. Black?
Aye.
Mr. Seeley?
Nay.
Mrs. Long?
Aye.
Mr. Underwood?
Aye.
And I vote aye. The motion carries 5-1. That is taken care of. New business, Chief Loftus, supplemental appropriation for backfill firefighters. You were gonna come back to us with the numbers here?
Yes, sir. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, good evening. Before you tonight, you pursuant to September 6th board meeting where you requested that we bring back cost figures for 3 firefighter EMTs to assist us with vacancies. As you know, we're in a highly competitive environment. We do lose a lot of folks through the course of a year. These 3 additional positions would be 1 per shift, and they would be used to fill in when folks are in that vacancy period. Right now, we're using overtime. That's not very effective because our firefighters, by their regular schedule, work 2,900 hours. By forcing them to work additional overtime, we call that mandatory holds. We really put ourselves at risk. We keep them from going to sleep. In fiscal year 23, we had 117 times where we told folks, you cannot go home. You need to stay at work because we don't have enough people to meet the minimum staffing requirement. So these positions would help eliminate some of those times. Any questions?
How much overtime did you spend last year? Bless you.
In total? Or just on?
Sure, in total first to get the big picture.
That I don't have that.
What do you have?
I can tell you this, last year would have been somewhere in the neighborhood of 400,000 in overtime, give or take.
And these 3 extra people starting January 1 would be 142,000.
I would anticipate we save about half of that in overtime. So we would save about 75,000 that we would normally spend in overtime.
That's really what I wanted to get at. The net number.
There is a net number, and it's probably going to be about 50% of that cost right off the top.
Okay.
490 last year.
490,000 for overtime last year.
Correct. Keep in mind though, with our overtime, some of that's guaranteed overtime. As I said, everybody works 2,900 hours by their regular schedule. The law only allows us to pay them straight time for 2,756. So each person gets 164 hours of overtime guaranteed per year.
Because you have a special arrangement with FLSA.
We do, yes, sir. 207. Okay.
I seem to remember that in the software. Okay, board members have questions of Chief Loftus?
Yeah, I'm still confused why we have $41,418 in overtime added into the cost of these 3. When you've got overtime built into your budget and you're saying you're gonna save it, but we're building another 41,000.
And anytime we hire anybody on the 207K exemption, I got to pay them at least 164 hours of overtime per person.
Right.
So overtime for us on average is about $32 an hour. Times that by 164 times 3.
Because of their work schedule, they have to work, what is it?
2,900.
4 10s or 5 10s or something like that?
They work either 9 or 10 24-hour shifts.
Okay, 24. Yeah.
Yep.
That was the police that were doing 5. All right, so they're on the clock for more than 40 hours every week.
More than 56 hours a week.
Yeah.
Mr. Black or Mr. Seeley. So each person is going to have some level of overtime assigned to them, even if they're on a shift. Overall, we will save money out of the overtime budget. But when I hire anybody, I've got to account for that guaranteed overtime, overtime for holiday pay. If they work on a holiday or they work on the observed holiday, they don't get time and a half, but they get straight time. It does come out of the overtime line.
Yeah, that's the reality, and there probably should be an overtime line in your budget and a required overtime line in your budget, so we could see the two.
They're 2 different things.
Okay.
It's not a choice that they're working overtime. It's by schedule.
Okay.
Chair, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir. Mr.
Chief,
Forehand?
quick question. That just now slipped my mind. Oh, the guaranteed overtime, is that still accrued over the course of a pay period? And I'll use this as a reference. I used to work for a union electrical contractor. There was people that would call in on a Friday and take Friday off and then come in and work Sundays, which are double time.
So for us, it doesn't work that way. For us, it works in a 28-day work period. That's defined by Fair Labor Standard. In that 28 days, you get overtime after 212 hours. All of our folks are scheduled more than 212 hours, so they're going to get guaranteed overtime. The second piece of that is a piece of legislation unique to Virginia, and it says if you take annual leave or paid leave, sick leave, annual leave, those hours are going to count in the calculation of overtime. That doesn't occur with any other employee because they didn't work the 40 hours in a week. So that is a unique piece to firefighters. So that's why I call it guaranteed overtime.
Yeah.
Even if they're sick or they take annual leave, we're still going to pay that.
That's a game changer, and that's precisely what I was referring to. Like you take 2 days off in the beginning of your pay cycle, and they're still getting overtime at the end of it because
Absolutely.
because of the law.
Yeah,
that was passed. Okay, thank you.
That's kind of why I say guaranteed. You want to stay for this vote real quick? Yep. Any other questions? This is the same thing we did for the sheriff. Is there a motion? Well, I'm going to make the motion since I brought it up. I'm going to move that we go ahead and approve Chief Loftus hire 3 people starting January 1.
Second.
All right, second by Mr. Back. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. The motion carries unanimously.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chief. I'm not going to do item number 7. We're going to do item number 7 at our October 24th meeting, if that's okay with the board. It's also okay if we don't do it. Sorry, Mr. Hughes. Mr. Cully, you want to give us some informational and calendar items? It's 10 o'clock.
Mr. Chairman, we've included the status of capital project report for your review. We have a Bowling Green Harvest Festival on the 21st, not this Saturday, but next. And I was just discussing with Chris, our special meeting on the 24th at 6 with the Planning Commission, and he's got some things that he wants to talk to you about how we may do that. And before he does that, Frog Level on the 28th, Frog Level Festival. And then, as we mentioned earlier, on Monday, the 30th, at 6:30 here in this room, our data center, town hall informational. The offices are closed on the election day, other than the registrar's office. So, office is closed on the 7th. That's an Iowa state holiday. And they're then closed again on the 10th for Veterans Day. VACO conference starts on the 11th and runs through Tuesday, the 14th. And then the board meeting is on Thursday night, remember that in November, Thursday night, the 16th at 6 o'clock. And then obviously the following Thursday is Thanksgiving holiday, Thursday and Friday. And do we get a half a day Wednesday? The governor do that? I didn't read that email.
It was in
we've been doing it
the
forever.
approval thing we did.
I knew y'all approved it. I just didn't. I thought
Yeah, it's a half a day Wednesday.
Half a day Wednesday's been standard for 20 years. And where did I lose?
So this just probably the last thing you want at the end of the meeting, but the details on the procedure for a special meeting. We've done it once before in recent memory.
Yes.
But this is different a little bit from just recessing to another meeting, which we've done some, on occasion. That would be a continuation of this meeting. If we're going to hold a joint special meeting, we would just need the chair or 2 members of the board to request of the clerk that this special meeting be held. And then we send out a letter to all of you saying that the special meeting is going to happen, and we advertise it per FOIA in all the places. I mean, functionally, the real notice is going to be the rezoning notice that's required under 2204 that goes in the paper 2 times, 14 days at least ahead. So really here, all we need is a direction from the chair or 2 members of the board that the clerk send out the letter to all of you that this special meeting is going to happen. It's going to tell you something you already know, but this is what the Virginia Code requires us to do.
All right, does everybody want to meet on the 24th?
And that's to consider the rezoning
The
application.
rezoning for,
Uh,
Matamede?
Matamede, yeah,
And a couple of,
yeah.
and we have a couple other things we didn't have on the agenda tonight. If we can get ready,
Well, we're gonna check on those tomorrow or next Wednesday.
What are they?
memorandum of understanding with the town of Bowling Green.
Okay.
Oh, you mean where all the counties paying for the town of Bowling
Hopefully,
Green to do something?
reassessment
I
contract,
don't care.
the 24th. Same night. It's a special meeting, but you certainly could handle some other business, and that reassessment and the MOU
Yeah.
are two things that we're not quite ready for tonight.
And
And
if-
otherwise, they got to wait till the 16th, which is the middle of the month of November.
Right, if I have to do Mr. Hughes's repeal and replace on the festivals,
Continuation of first reading.
yeah, I said if I have to.
Okay.
We just have to put it all in the notice.
The first reading was bad, period. I assume this one's gonna be bad again today, so. All right, the entire board wants to direct the clerk to do that, not
Okay.
just the chair.
So we're gonna prepare the notice, and I guess the last thing is that notice has to state everything that we're gonna discuss at the special meeting.
Just those
So-
4 things.
So we'll put those 4 things in the notice, circulate it. If all 6 of you are there, you can take up additional items. But
No, just those
But-
4 things.
yes, okay, we will do that.
All right, Mr. Hughes, is that okay with you? You can wait till the 24th? Okay, I appreciate it. All righty, thank you very much. Gee, it's been such a fun day. We're done.
Closing board comments.
Closing board comments. Mr. Underwood.
It's been a pretty interesting meeting. And I think part of the issue is that there's so many rumors going around about what we've approved and what we haven't approved. And the person's got a right to apply, and it's up to this board to maintain and try to understand what we're trying to do for the county. And I think that's where it gets lost in all the rumors and comments. And I'm just, again, appalled by the Facebook information and the accusations to Mr. Hughes. I'm sorry, Mr. Hughes, for that, and it's disappointing as well. That's my comments.
I do have a request of Mr. Hughes, for myself particularly, when we have, I know you put the red line, ordinance in our book. I would like your final draft without all the red lines, because it's a lot easier on my eyes to read. If you could get that to me or stick it in my have Pam stick it in my folder for me, and then I can compare it with the old ones.
Can you email it to all of us without red line?
Well, I was just, the part that we did tonight, really,
Corrections.
with all the corrections on it, you know, we've got a lot of lines out, and then we've got new wording put, and my eyes aren't as young as they used to be, and these are new glasses, so, you know, that's just the way it goes. I also wanted to ask, whoever is in charge of doing these tables, I don't know if you all can't tell it, but these tables are not in the same place. I am shifting all over because I cannot roll my chair up to the desk. So I'm over here, I'm doing this and this all night long because I cannot get up underneath this here. So if we could next time, just make sure they're in our normal spots, I would appreciate it.
Mr. Sealy, closing board comment?
I have none, Mr. Chairman.
Black?
None.
Mr. Forehand?
Mr. Hughes, I appreciate your efforts, and I know that we're difficult to work with sometimes. But I do thank you, and I know that, if a homeowner or a landowner wants to build a home, the first call they make is to planning. If somebody wants to put a road in, first call they make is to planning. A developer wants to pitch something or see what's even allowed, the first call is to planning. The reach that you have and the people that reach out to you is pretty wide. And I'm fully aware that even random conversations that people can take out of context and make it look terrible. And but I support you, and I'm here to help you however I can. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Hughes, I was going to echo those same comments. As Mr. McKenzie, the county attorney, talked about how changes are made during rezoning process, they're not requested by the supervisor. They're requested by the county attorney, the planning, director, county administrator sometimes. So you are the interface with us for a lot of things, and we appreciate what you're doing. A lot of the discussion and the heated discussion that the board has been involved in was actually started before your time, so you kind of walked into it and didn't deserve some of the comments you got. And lastly, if you want to send stuff to your home email and work on it at home, that's your prerogative. It's your work. We just want to make sure we do what's right for the county, and that's what we're trying to do. So I appreciate the hard work you and the entire staff has, and I think Mr. Cully can attest to the fact that when we end the staff meeting call, at least with me, I always say thanks for your hard work, and that applies to all the county staff. So I think we're all doing a great job, and I do appreciate your efforts. So on that note, we'll take a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor, aye? Boom.